Welcome to Spirits Podcast, a boozy dive into mythology, legends, and folklore. Every week we pour a drink and learn about a new story from around the world. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Julia.
And this episode 250, The Magic of Home, and so much more with Sarah Hollowell.
Sarah was such a delight to talk to. I feel like sometimes we come out of interviews, I'm like, wow, what a fantastic person. Like really, really great to talk to them, had a lot of insightful things. And then sometimes we finish interviews, I'm like, wow, what a great person. I want to be friends with this person forever.
I know.
And Sarah was definitely the latter.
And I am just so excited. We got to talk about so much stuff ever since I saw the cover of her newest book, her upcoming book, on Twitter, like almost a year ago, I think. It was just absolutely apparent that this is something that all conspirators need to know about. So we're going to get into that and much, much more. But first, we want to welcome and thank our newest patrons, McKaylee, Psyche, and Kyle. I almost said Kylie because of the way that McKaylee and Psyche's names are spelled. And Kyle, thank you so much. And thank you to our supporting producer level patrons whose support sustains us. And that's why you are a supporting producer. You support us. Alicia, Allison, Brian, Deborah, Hannah, Jack Marie, Jane, Jessica Stewart, Justin, Keegan, Measelkins, Megan Linger, Megan Moon, Phil Fresh, Captain Jonathan, Malachi, Cosmos, Sarah, Scott, and Zazie.
You sustain us like the prayers sustained the Greek gods whenever like someone was like, oh, I have this wonderful bounty. Let me make small sacrifices of like corn and whatnot to Zeus and Demeter.
I love that so much. And thank you to our legend level patrons who I think will be able to navigate their way through a starless forest. Audra, Clara, Drew, J. Bay, Key, Alexis, Mary, Morgan, Morgan H, Mother of Vikings, Sarah, and PMEF Scotty.
What wonderful people. What wonderful people. Really the nymphs and the naiads to our Greek gods.
They absolutely are.
So Amanda, I know like we're getting into spooky season now. What have you been watching, listening to, reading lately? Is it spooky?
Not spooky at all, Julia. I am so excited about the return of Survivor tomorrow. Mm-hmm. It has been a very bleak year and a half without Survivor on the airwaves, and it is back. And it is my favorite reality TV show. I love it dearly. I listen to Survivor podcasts. I like make I have a calendar of Survivor episodes, so like I know when they're coming out. I did a little draft with myself where I picked the players that I thought were most likely to make it to the finals.
Incredible.
And this cast is half POC for the first time in Survivor history, and it's a part of a bigger initiative that the network is making. And everybody on that cast looks so interesting. There's only one or two people where I'm like, I hope you're a villain and I hate you. Everybody else is just like, you seem great, sweetie, and I want you to succeed. I could not be more excited. If you think that Survivor is just kind of like a whatever TV show that's been on for 21 years, which it has been, give it a go. This might be a really good season to get started.
I'm just so curious as to how they keep it fresh and new every season, because like I know the people dynamics is a huge part of the show, but I'm so curious as like what's happening with immunity idols, and is there like a necklace now or something? I don't know.
The thing is, Julia, no one loves their job more than Jeff Probst loves his
really
job.
Does.
And Jeff Probst loves Survivor. He loves it. He wants it to be fun. He wants it to be interesting. It's a shorter season than normal. The the amount of time they spend on the island is shorter, so it's gonna kind of like move faster and be harder. So it's just, it's these small things that make you excited and give you a reason to look forward to Wednesdays or Thursdays or whatever. Wait, guys, it's today. It's Wednesday, the 22nd. Okay, I'm so excited. Survivor. Yes, get on it.
Well, Amanda, do you know what other show on the Multitude Network talks about Survivor just as much as we do here on Spirits?
What is it?
I believe it would be our audio sitcom Next Stop, which I specifically remember has scenes from Survivor in it.
The roommates watch Survivor much like I did, and so many people in their 20s. You have the reality show or the series that you marathon with your friends, and Next Stop is all about that time in your 20s when people are growing up around you and you're kind of like, oh, am I going to catch up?
It's 10 episodes in their first season. They follow these 3 roommates who are going through trials in like work and relationships and friendships, and we watch them grow as a unit no matter what life throws at them. And if you like grew up watching classic sitcoms, there's nothing more comforting in times of stress and upheaval than like revisiting those good vibes of the classic sitcom. And it is like solidly a 21st century sitcom, so it gives you something to laugh about without having to punch down, which is what I love about the show.
Me too. And season 1 is available in its entirety for you to marathon now. Just search for Next Stop in your podcast app or go to nextstopshow.com.
Heck yeah, Next Stop. Choo choo. That's the train to the podcast.
I love it so much. Trains, industry. We gotta love it. Well, folks, without further ado, congrats, Sarah Hollowell, on your book being out, and enjoy Spirits Podcast episode 250, The Magic of Home with Sarah Hollowell. so excited. Another Twitter avatar made real right in front of me here on the podcast. Sarah Hollowell, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And please let the people know who you are.
Hello. I am a young adult author, apparently. That's still weird to say. My debut book is coming out next month, so it doesn't quite feel real. Or I guess next month right now. Who knows what time it will be when this comes out.
It'll just have come out, I think.
Yes. Wonderful. By day, I work at a university, so that's very exciting. And by day and also by night, I write and play a lot of video games, pretty much.
Nice.
We're going to talk a lot about like representation and writing and blah, blah, blah. Can you tell me what video games you're super into? Because I'm on my third playthrough of Stardew, and it's just like, I don't know what else to do with myself.
I love Stardew. I spent several months this summer being extremely obsessed with Cozy Grove.
Yeah.
Which is so cute. Right now, I got back into replaying Hollow Knight, which is one of my favorite games.
Nice.
And I replayed it almost up to the end, and then I didn't want to do the final boss fight because it's hard, so I just started a new game instead and started playing it again.
That's self-care.
I'm an Animal Crossing person. Hades. Stuff, I don't know. Zelda, I was raised on Nintendo, so like I've only ever really had Nintendo consoles, and I don't do computer games, so basically if it's on a Switch, I usually have played it, but
nice.
Yeah. Mostly that, and then my boyfriend and I will play like Mario Kart and Super Smash, and he always annihilates me.
That's how you know it's a good relationship, because then you can just be like, yeah, he always beats me, but we still keep playing. That's how you know.
Exactly. No, it's like I have no idea what I'm doing. He knows how to do all the special moves, and I'm just like, I'm Zelda, and I'm jumping around.
Yeah, I'm Jigglypuff, and I'm gonna hang out, or I'm Kirby, and I will eat you. That's how I play.
It's fun.
It's all you need. So because we're celebrating your debut YA fantasy novel, I think my first question is kind of going to be like, what first drew you to fantasy? Like, at what point did you discover like, oh, this is the genre for me? And then what point did you say like, I think I want to write something about this?
I feel like I don't know when I haven't been into fantasy. I was raised by nerds. My father's favorite books are Lord of the Rings. First movie came out when I was like 10, I think. 10 or 11, and I wasn't allowed to see it until I read the book. That was my father's rule. I could not see it until I read Fellowship of the Ring. I think he wouldn't have actually done that, because I distinctly remember reading like the last 20 pages frantically on the way to the theater, so I think he was going to let me see it no matter what.
That's fair.
But I've just always read fantasy. My aunt always gave me loads of fantasy books. She got me into like, I think she's the one who gave me the Enchanted Forest Chronicles by Patricia C. Reed, which are incredible.
Is that the one where it's the princess who runs away and ends up being like a maid for a bunch of dragons?
Yes.
Oh my God, I haven't met anyone else who has read those books. I loved those books as a kid.
They're incredible. They're incredible. And I think those are probably the ones that really, because I've been writing since I was a kid. And like one of the first books I wrote, I say book because it was probably like 50 pages, but I was 11, so it's a book.
That's long for an 11-year-old.
Exactly. The first one I wrote, second maybe, I guess the first one was actually kind of a Fear Street ripoff. The second one, I guess, was an Enchanted Forest ripoff. Yeah, no, I think that might have been what made me go, I want to write fantasy, because I just love those books so much, and I wanted to write something that made me feel the way those books made me feel. Probably didn't achieve that at 11, but I had a lot of fun writing it, and I kept writing, so I guess it worked out. But I've just always loved, I mean, I love a lot of genres, honestly. I lean more towards writing in contemporary fantasy, trying out horror, things like that. Sci-fi intimidates me a little bit for writing, but reading, I love it. But yeah, no, I was raised by weird nerds, and so I've just always been a weird nerd also.
Mentioning Fear Street, how do you feel about the movies that just came out?
I fucking loved them.
Okay,
I
good.
loved them.
I had to sit my husband down and watch them because I think he's going to like it, but I'm excited that everyone I've spoken to about them has liked them so far.
Like, I wasn't, like, the first one, I was like, that was fun. Like, I enjoyed it, and I thought it had the vibe of the books really down, because those are some just, like, I forgot how bloody those books really are. I reread a couple, and I was like, damn, okay, no, this is actually pretty accurate. I read them when I was, like, 10, but cool. By the time we got to the third one and the way they wrapped the trilogy up, I was just like, yes, this is so good. I loved it. It was perfect. It was perfect. I want to rewatch them. And my boyfriend liked them a lot more than he thought he was going to, because he was like, yeah, I guess we'll watch it he's just humoring me. He doesn't really like horror or anything, and he ended up liking them. So I think that is already a vote in its favor, because he doesn't like anything in terms of like horror or slasher or anything like that.
Well, talking about things that are surprisingly dark and also wonderful to visit, a Dark and Starless Forest.
Ooh, nice, Julia.
Thank
Very
you.
good segue.
Thank you. I try really hard. So I would love to talk a little bit about the book, because obviously we want people to read it. We're very excited. Can you give people a very quick, like non-spoilery synopsis of the book to kind of entice them, go pick it up?
Yeah, absolutely. So A Dark and Starless Forest is about a young girl named Derry who is magical and who lives in a secluded lake house with her adopted siblings who are also magic. And they live with their kind of like adoptive fatherish figure, Frank, who has been raising them and teaching them how to use magic. And everything is going fine-ish until her sister Jane disappears. And then things start to go very, very bad very quickly.
They sure do. Sure do. I have a couple of questions about the book. I thoroughly enjoyed it, obviously. Otherwise, you know, we would be talking to you. So in the book, the character of Frank, who acts as their kind of like chaperone / adopted father, he uses the term alchemy to describe the magic that Derry and her siblings practice, though they have a conversation later on about how that title doesn't suit them and they're looking for another name. And that sort of follows a conversation about like language used by the siblings to describe their sexuality and their gender. So did you like intend for that to be a parallel of the siblings like being able to explore and find the right labels to suit them best? Or did you just want to talk a little bit about identity? I'm very curious.
I did not entirely intend that parallel, but I really like it now that you've said it. So in the future, I am going to pretend like I intended it.
Oh, yes.
Because that makes me sound very smart. I didn't intend it, although it did. Like, I felt like it fit because so much of the book tends to involve Frank trying to like force them to be who he wants them to be. Mm-hmm. And it is also about Derry and everyone else, all of her other siblings kind of being able to go, well, actually, can I just use my own words, the things that make me happy? That was kind of like a theme I was definitely purposely playing with. And I was also just with the labels they use and also trying to find a way to make it realistic that they would know these labels because they have been isolated for so long. A big part of it was just because, especially when I started writing it, it's much better now. There's way more books out now than when I first started writing it, but there were not a lot of, especially like YA books where they would use the words. It would kind of just be vague and just like, they wouldn't really say bisexual. They would just kind of like wink about it. That is very different now.
Locked eyes.
Yes.
Yeah, like I locked eyes with someone else in the locker room and then I looked ashamedly away.
Yes.
That's bisexual representation from the 90s, at least.
Yes. And there were a lot of different conversations happening about this in the YA community for years. But when I started writing it, that was especially a big thing, was just like using the actual words. And now the landscape is much, much better. It's much more diverse. Still ages to go, still like loads of ways to go because there's never enough. It's still overwhelmingly white for one thing, overwhelmingly straight, but there's more identity out there. There are more books that actually say like, yes, this character is asexual, this character is trans, this character is whatever, which is also like not to say the one trick with this is that I also don't want to act like the books that purposefully don't use them are bad, because there are also ways to not use those words that is very powerful and very purposeful. Man, the conversation around representation and identity is so tricky and nuanced.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
there's a million ways to do this. There's no one right way. But that was the way I wanted to do it for this book, at least. I wanted to be able to say, here's the word, so you know for sure.
Yeah.
I am no dancing around it, especially because when people are looking at like queer representation, especially in books or media in general, they tend to expect it to be shown in a romantic way or a sexual way. And I wasn't going to be doing that. I wasn't going to have a relationship in the book, really. And I'm still nervous about this. Like, this is something that so far people have been great. I am nervous to see the kind of reception in terms of sometimes people read a book with a queer character, but if they're not in a relationship, then they're like, they're not actually though, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, they still are.
And I think for a lot of us, like the sort of experience of like knowing or hinting at what I wanted without any kind of agency or ability to go after it is so the experience of my queer adolescence.
Yes.
So that is also powerful.
Yeah. And like finding terms for me personally is so powerful. I did not know, like, I'm bisexual. I did not know this until I was 14 when I heard the word bisexual for the first time in my life. I didn't know that was an option.
And you were like, oh, that one.
I thought you were gay or straight. And it was like, that was my entire world. And then I think because of fanfiction.net, I learned about bisexuality and I was like, holy shit, I can do that?
Mine was girl.com.
Nice. We all have that place.
We do.
Fanfiction.net, saving lives.
Exactly.
Truly.
And that's true for me with a lot of things. Like, that's true for me also just even with like diagnoses. Like, I got diagnosed with ADHD a couple years ago, finally. And that has been huge for me. There's something about having a word, even if it's an imperfect word, because some people have like identity words that others think are outdated or things like that. Like, there's the eternal debate, unnecessary to me debate about bisexual and pansexual, because I'm like, just the one that works for you.
Yeah.
Do that.
Agreed.
There's just something so powerful about having something because it enables you to learn more about it. It's a lot easier to Google ADHD than, hey, why can't I do things? Why is that happening to me?
Why won't my brain let me do the dishes? And it's been so many days and I just cannot work up the energy to do it.
Exactly. And similarly with queer identity, like, it's a lot easier to find people who can talk to you about it and can say, yeah, me too, if you have a word where you can kind of locate them. Especially online. Now you can Google stuff.
Absolutely. I was very excited when you mentioned, like, in passing, like, oh, Jane's ADHD meds might not have, like, you know, gone the whole day. And so she, like, lost a lot of energy. I'm like, same, Jane, all the time.
All the time. Like, there's a point in the afternoon where I just start yawning. And I'm like, yep, there goes the Vyvanse.
Yeah, if you see me yawn during that, it's because I'm hitting my end of the day slump, and it's nothing to do with you.
I understand completely. I took mine like an hour late to try and avoid that during this, but we'll see if it worked.
100%.
That's very thoughtful. Between that and setting up your cat obstacle course so that they take longer to come bother you, Sarah, you're like most conscientious guest of the summer.
It's because I have anxiety.
Mood.
Me as well. This episode is sponsored by Skillshare. They are an online learning community that is offering Spirits listeners a free trial of premium membership because you are a wonderful, beautiful, complex human being you were born to create. So you can learn, express, and discover what you can make with online classes from Skillshare. I took one recently led by Jonathan Van Ness called The Ultimate Self-Care Playbook. Discover ways to nurture your centered self. And having ways that Jonathan, somebody who, you know, the internet loves and I love, teach me how to put myself first and make time for myself in my day is really, really useful. And whether you're looking for classes on that, on things like plant care and crafts and hobbies or professional skills like photography, productivity, animation, Skillshare's the spot for you. Go to Skillshare.com/spirits, where our listeners get a 1-month free trial of premium membership. That's 1 month free at Skillshare.com/spirits.
Amanda, have you ever tried on a really cute piece of clothing and you're like, oh my God, this looks so good on me. I love it so much. But oh my God, the like zipper's too itchy, or this button is like digging into my skin, or it's just too scratchy, like the fabric is too itchy. Amanda, there's seriously a problem with clothing, but luckily I get a lot of my loungewear now from the buttery soft company, Brooklinen.
The buttery soft. What have you been enjoying from them?
Oh my God, I have these little pair of shorts and they're so comfy, and they got one pocket that's the perfect size for my phone. So if I'm going like, you know, from the couch to the bathroom or back and forth and I need to put my phone in my pocket, it's just right there in the back. I don't have to worry about it. And they're so comfortable. They're warm, yet also because they're shorts, they're cooling. So it's perfect time for transition weather clothing, in my opinion. And Brooklinen has been listening to what we all need most, and they've responded with this ultra comfy loungewear at a super fair price. It has classic cuts and no zippers for limitless comfort that you can pull off in real life. And so you can just like luxuriate in coziness all day long. And there's a reason that Brooklinen has over 75,000 5-star reviews and counting. So if you're looking for ways to enhance your comfort, check out Brooklinen's candles as well. They have eye masks and they have accessories that help you properly celebrate your chill. So go on, get comfortable, and get it for less at Brooklinen. Go to brooklinen.com and use the promo code SPIRITS to get $20 off with a minimum purchase of $100. That's BROOKLINEN.com and enter the promo code SPIRITS for $20 off with a minimum purchase of $100. That's brooklinen.com, promo code SPIRITS. Thanks, Brooklyn.
And Julia, you and I got a chance to hang out in person a few days ago,
did.
which I absolutely loved. And there comes a moment in your night where you say, hey, I could really go for gyoza. And I say, I could really go for a slice of vegan pizza. And you know what? We both get to have what we want because you don't have to, compromise on something that everybody feels meh about. Sometimes you can get everything that everybody needs via DoorDash. This is an app that connects you with the restaurants you love right now and right to your door. They also now have grocery essentials, so you can get drinks, snacks, and other household items delivered in under an hour. All you have to do is open the DoorDash app, choose what you want from where you want, and your items will be left safely outside your door.
So for a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code CreepyCool. That's 25% off up to a $10 value and 0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter the code CreepyCool. Don't forget that's code CreepyCool, all one word, for 25% off your first order with DoorDash, subject to change. Terms apply.
Subject to change. Terms apply. And now, let's get back to the show.
I really appreciate you're so explicit in your words with the sexuality and the gender representation and also like with race. And it made me think when you started talking about like sometimes it is better to be explicit and say the thing. I was recalling the like conversations around fandom when they were making the Hunger Games movies. And I remember like, I didn't read into it when I was reading those books for the first time that Katniss is supposed to be indigenous. She's supposed to be Native American.
Yeah.
And like people who saw that were like, hey, this character is supposed to be this. And everyone else is like, wait, what? No, it never said that like officially in the book. And it's just so much easier for everyone, I guess, when you can explicitly say this character is this. And no one can deny that in creating a movie and a large franchise off of it.
No, that's definitely something I think about. Like, I mean, I think about when I kind of like explicitly describe race, especially, like I think about things like the white default, the way that if you don't say it, people will still go, okay, so they're white. Or the way where if you say that other people are like Black or Latino or anything, but then you don't say that one character is white, it's kind of like, okay, so you're still treating them as like they're the normal one.
Yeah.
That was on my mind. And then also, the way that readers unintentionally or intentionally will just kind of gloss over things. Mm-hmm. Sometimes even when you say it explicitly, they still will. Because like with the Hunger Games, like I don't remember if she ever calls Rue Black, but she definitely talks about her being dark-skinned. And people were still like, now why is she being played by a Black person?
Yep.
So people will still find ways around it. But I feel like the more explicit you can be, it's just better for everyone, both so that people don't have something to hide behind when they want to deny it, but also so that the people who it matters to can be like, okay, I'm not just imagining this.
Yeah.
It is right here.
I'm not just projecting.
I felt that way, like I think so much of Twitter did when I saw the cover of the book for the first time. And I'm like, oh my God, an incredible fat protagonist. I love her strong arms. I love her shirt. I love her hands. I love her chin. Like she is so beautiful. And I know that control over the cover is not always something that authors have a ton of say over. But can you tell me a little bit about how that process was like and how you feel about having a character that people know exactly what she looks like?
For one thing, it's incredible. And actually, I was so lucky with the cover process. It was, for one thing, it is in my contract that I get like, not approval, but I get to a say in it, which would only go so far. But luckily, I didn't really need to actually utilize that much of it anyway, because when my editor first emailed me to say, hey, we're working on the cover, she right from the start was like, can you give me some like image references about how fat Derry is so that we can get it right? Like she wanted, because she was like, I know fat can mean a lot of different things, so we want to make sure that we are getting her body right. Like they were very proactive about that.
Damn. Which
was incredible. I did not expect that. I thought that I was kind of worried. I know that I've definitely heard from other authors that there can sometimes be a fight to like get that any kind of like body or race representation accurately on a cover, or they'll kind of try to hide it. Like it'll be like a vague, distant silhouette, or you just won't really see them.
Her shirt has an empire waist. What do you mean? Is that not what you asked for? And it's like, no.
That's actually interesting, because like the original version of the cover had her wearing a t-shirt that covered her arms, and that was the one thing where I was like, no, we can't. We're not going to have her cover her arms.
Totally.
Because I feel like people who are fat or have been fat are very aware of this. You try very hard, especially when you're younger, because I wrote this in a lot of ways for like the fat high school me. You try very hard to cover your body.
Oh my God. The like unnecessary modesty cardigan that like just keeps you sweating in the summertime is like, I don't think I've worn a cardigan for 10 years since I like started getting tattoos on my arms to make myself show them and be happy about them and proud of them. Shout out to all cardigan wearers. I love you guys too. But there is a particular experience of being like, yeah, I mean, it would just be more flattering to like wear a 3/4 length cardigan. I'm just like, oh God.
Exactly. There's a huge difference because like I love cardigans, but I love them in fall and I love them when it's not boiling outside.
Exactly.
Or like I do not wear a lot of black, or if I do, I wear it with color. But when I was in high school, I wore so much black that kids thought I was goth. And it was like, no, it's just that I'm fat. So black is slimming. You're supposed to wear black.
Or when we were growing up, there just weren't choices. Like there wasn't torrid. you couldn't like walk into a store and grab a double X or up anywhere. It's very exciting to see so many stylish plus size and fat like influencers on TikTok and Instagram. I'm just like, you kids, I'm so happy for you.
It's so incredible. It's one of those things where it's like, I wish I had that growing up. I'm so happy they do. Mm-hmm. Because yeah, when I was like, I think a senior in high school, I learned about Lane Bryant, and that was like the first plus size store that I could like really go to.
Mine was Chico's, and I was like definitely the youngest by 40 years, but you know what? They do have some colorful tunics.
They do. Yeah, no, I still have some clothes that I got from Lane Bryant when I was like a senior in high school. Also, you know, all love to Lane Bryant, not exactly my style all the time. Kind of discovering that I could wear color was huge for me because I'm naturally a very colorful person. I really like it.
Yeah.
And there's just a huge difference between like wearing black because you're like, I like to wear black. It's like my favorite color versus I'm wearing black because I want to disappear and not in a good way.
Totally. Yeah. I recommend colorful clothing on all body types and cover parts of your body you don't like in tattoos. That's how it's worked for me.
Exactly. With her arms, and like it was really important to me like she have a double chin because like even now I still like struggle with that sometimes when I'm taking selfies and stuff. Yeah. I'll still notice it and I'll still be like, oh, should I like angle my head a little differently? Like it's a constant battle to get that voice out of your head. I really wanted her to show her arms. I wanted them to be visibly like not just like, oh yeah, she's like, you know, she's fat, but she has like some slender parts. I was like, no, she needs to be like fat. Genuinely.
She doesn't just have an hourglass shape. Exactly. Like she, you know, this is what her body looks like. And I think that's incredible.
Yeah. Every time I look at the cover, I like cry a little because it was just so important to me. And I was so happy that my publisher and my editor were extremely on board with it. My agent and I actually tried to get her less dressed, like maybe dressed in vines and stuff. Instead, my agent actually sent me like, there's a beautiful photo shoot that Lizzo did where she's like wearing this like bodysuit that's just like flowers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The publisher did think that might be a little too racy for YA.
Just a little bit.
We did like make an attempt to see if we could do some sort of modest enough version of that was like, we don't want it to be sexual. We just want to show the fatness more than anything. But I'm still so happy with how it ended up. Like I have had a lot of people. I remember when I first shared the cover, I had so many people and young people, especially like sharing it saying, holy shit, she looks like me. And I cried just a lot because I was like, that's what I want. This is what I have done the book for, is for you, child.
Yeah. My partner Eric saw it on Twitter because he like trawls the content caves of the internet for me and like brings back only nice things. And he sent me the tweet and he's like, this is up your interest. And I'm like, yes, like looks like a plant tattoo. Yes. Like fat witch on the cover. Yes. Fantasy. Yes. YA. Yes. Sarah Hollowell. I'm totally into it.
I love that. So the forest obviously plays a really big part in the story that's in the title, and also like, you know, there's a lot of things going on with that forest. And one of the things that kind of happens after the disappearance of Jane is that sort of whispering voice that's coming from the forest. And I know that's a pretty common trope in both like fantasy and in horror. And we've talked on the show a bunch about how like the forest definitely can be frightening only because of how strange it can sound in the dark, you know, even when you know what's out there already. So was there a particular like story or experience that either you had or that inspired this for A Dark and Starless Forest?
It's kind of like an amalgamation, I guess. I definitely hung out in like forests a lot as a kid. I grew up in Indiana. I still live in Indiana.
I see you were a Midwest forest queer.
Yes.
Aren't we all grown up forest queers at the end of the day?
Basically.
I was a suburban forest queer, yes.
The first elementary school I went to was like right next to a forest that we would sometimes be able to go into. My best friend in high school lived right up against a forest, and we would explore it all the time. We were we were both just like very queer fairy obsessed children. We spent a lot of time in the forest.
Crystals, potions made out of leaves and mud, etc.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tag yourself. Fae, mushrooms, gems, fallen logs.
Yeah.
You can only be one of 4.
That whole aesthetic is perfect. My parents are of the opinion with their backyard and front yard, they have a huge backyard. I mean, I guess huge by they live in the city standards, but not the city because they live in Columbus, Indiana, which has like 50,000 people. That's where I come from. They are of the opinion that grass is pointless. And so their yards are all like flowers and trees and bamboo, actually, and just like a lot of really cool stuff. So the backyard we always called the jungle because it was just trees and trees and trees, but also bamboo and just like cool stuff. And I spent a lot of time in there. I just spent a lot of time hanging out in that backyard. So forests have always just really captured me. I just find them really beautiful and a little spooky. And I'm a horror fan. I have been since I was a kid. My dad gave me the fantasy more than anything. My mom gave me the horror. She's a huge Stephen King fan.
Nice.
One of my favorite movies as a child was Langoliers and also It. So this is who I am.
You and I had wildly different experiences with It, and that's fine.
It scared me, but I just was fascinated by it. So I watched it over and over again.
Tim Curry's performance of that is incredible. Like, looking at it now as an objective adult, it is very enticing and very frightening. But as an 8-year-old watching it for the first time, clowns, no good no more.
For some reason, as a kid, the things that scared me the most were like The Brave Little Toaster and like The Secret of Nim. Those were horrifying to me. Whereas like Stephen King movies, I was just, yeah, let's watch another Stephen King movie. I love these. It's like I didn't learn to be scared of the right things until I think I hit puberty mostly. Suddenly things did scare me. Horror movies did scare me. But yeah, so I kind of brought just like all those sensibilities into it. And like, yeah, like you said, like the whispering kind of forest and a lot of the things that are in it are kind of common tropes. Some of those are just things where it's like, I like that. And that's literally the only reason behind it being in there is that I like it.
That's great. That's a good reason to have it there.
I think it's spooky. Like, one of my favorite traits that like there's, without being too spoilery, there's like a person that Derry meets in the forest who initially can only speak by like repeating Derry's words back to her, which is 100% taken from the Doctor Who episode Midnight.
Yay!
I love that.
100% that's what that's from, because I love that episode. I can't watch it. It stresses me out too much. I find it very scary. So I wanted to include that because I was like, that is so scary to me. Like you have plenty of legends of things that like steal voices and will try to lure people with that voice. But to me, it was just like the idea of something repeating your own words back at you to your face. There's just something about it that's so spooky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the echo personified, or the inability of the forest to help you personified.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, that's kind of where a lot of it came from, is just I have grown up with forests. I haven't really actually had many of my own like spooky experiences other than ones that were made up in my head. I do distinctly remember in 6th grade, I have a distinct memory of being at like a camp and we were walking through the woods to like another building and it was dark. And I just started sobbing because I was just scared because it was dark and we were in the woods.
The woods is scary at night. That's what I'm saying. Even grown people, like, you hear like something walking in the woods and you don't know what it is and you don't want to know what it is.
Absolutely not. Like, I still hate being outside at night. I'm not an outdoorsy person anyway, but one of the reasons I can't imagine myself camping is because no, I'm not going to be out of doors in the nighttime. Sometimes it's scary enough to be inside in the nighttime.
It's true.
I am a hothouse flower. I need my little protective greenhouse.
Exactly. I love that we live in a world where I can roughly make the temperature what I want, depending on how good my AC or heat feel like behaving on a given day.
Yes, I have my humidifier. I have my scents that I prefer. I have my blankets that I prefer. And you know what? I'm a goddamn adult. I'm going to sleep in that biome as often as possible.
That's how I feel. That is exactly how I feel. I love the outdoors aesthetically. I love it conceptually. I wish I was an outdoorsy person. Whenever I watch movies where someone's like out in a field and like sitting in the grass or laying in the grass reading a book, I'm like, oh, that looks so good. You actually try it. It's like, this is itchy and bad.
Yeah.
And there's
itchy. There's bugs all over me now. Yeah.
Yep.
And I hate that. I hate that it isn't actually like, it always looks so comfy, like sitting on like a green pillow or something. And it's like, no, it's hard. It's uneven. There's no good place to sit. I need a chair.
It's a lot of crabgrass, probably.
A screened porch is really my ideal because then you have all the comforts of inside plus a temperature you can't fully control and no bugs.
Exactly. No, I completely agree with you.
Talking a little bit more about the forest now that we've established not an outdoor kid. One of the characters at one point kind of suggests that the forest might have infected Derry as she's spending more time in it. And this really had me thinking about a conversation that I was having a while ago about how one of the horror movie tropes that happens a lot, especially in haunted house movies, is like women or the feminine characters are usually the ones who are more likely to be haunted or feel that kind of like demonic or ghostly oppression. I'm curious if that was like a conscious decision of you kind of playing into that trope of like, oh, the forest like is more powerful than us and might be changing us, especially since early on in the book you also mentioned Frank only trains non-male alchemists in their magic, and I was like, I'm curious about whether or not that's the same line.
It definitely kind of is. Like, one of the things that I really wanted to play with in this book was definitely writing a girl who was kind of dealing with that like overpowering force. And like, I definitely have some various like little themes and metaphors in there of the various things infecting her, and like be that the forest or her own magic or her anger, but then also not wanting her to be punished for that, essentially. Like, I am someone who really struggles personally with letting myself feel anger and letting even rightful anger or letting myself express it. And I kind of did use Derry a little bit for a little bit of like therapy with that, where it's like one of the things she really deals with is her anger more than anything. The forest infection is kind of like parallel to that, basically. I was kind of like putting them next to each other, and especially feeling about that as a girl growing up, being like, you're not supposed to be angry, you're not supposed to be violent, you're not supposed to feel those things, you're definitely not supposed to express those things, and you're not supposed to crave power. Which was kind of a big part of the forest for her, is that it made her feel powerful, and kind of like, is that good? Is that bad? And kind of wanting to show both, like showing the ways where it's like, it can be very good. It can definitely really help you. But if you let it take control over you in a completely where you're not thinking anymore and you're not using it purposefully, it can also really hurt you or people around you. Was kind of the stuff I was trying to play with there.
Oh, I think I even wrote down that line. Where is it? And I'm going to quote you at you because it's my favorite thing to do to authors. Quote, all magic can be dangerous if it's twisted and prodded and pushed the right way. But some magic is dangerous unless you twist it the right way. You have to work at not letting it hurt someone.
Dang, that's a good line.
That's a good line, isn't it?
Who wrote that?
Forgot I wrote that.
But I loved that. I was like, that definitely aligns with what you just said. So I wanted to quote you at you.
Well, I like, I mean, that's something I'm kind of fascinated with in terms of both like supernatural things in books and in media, and also just in personal life, like the ways that I think emotions can be very powerful and can be very useful. I think anger can be very powerful and very useful. I also think that it can be very toxic and bad, but so can other emotions. Like, it's not just anger. Sadness can do the same thing. In some ways, even like joy, depending on where the source of it, can do the same thing. Or like an obsessive need to seem happy can be toxic in the same way. And it's like, I, as someone who has had to learn how to just be like honest about my emotions instead of trying to like make myself as convenient as possible to other people.
Yep.
Oh, I'm tagged in this photo and I don't like it.
Still something I struggle with, but that's why I'm in therapy.
Yep.
Like, that's something I kind of live vicariously through my characters in that way, where it's like, I want them to actually, even if they also struggle with it, I want them to reach that satisfying conclusion where they are able to both recognize that their emotions or their magic can be used in bad ways and good ways, and being able to just be honest with themselves and like others in some ways when they can be. It's a little tricky with Derry towards the end, but that gets spoilery.
We don't want to give too many spoilers away.
I like the ending, so.
I do too. That kind of leads really nicely into another theme that I saw in the book, which is cycles, specifically cycles of violence and abuse. And I know that's a really difficult subject to kind of talk on. So, and I imagine even more difficult to write about. But would you mind talking a little bit about why this is such an important theme for A Dark and Starless Forest?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a theme that keeps coming back in my stories, even when I'm not intending it to. The book I'm working on right now had no intention of having like abuse themes, but it came back anyway. A large part of it is because basically from around the time I was like 15 to around 23, all of my relationships were emotionally abusive. And that had a really big impact on me because it was from a pretty formative age. I am fascinated, I guess, by what this looks like and about unpacking it and about digging into like the nuance of it. And one of my like big things is specifically going from the side of someone where it's not as easy as just, oh, they've been bad to me, I hate them now. It's so complicated. You can deeply love someone who is actively hurting you. And that's hard. That's really hard. And you can like start to think that the way they treat you is just the way you deserve to be treated. And so you kind of start to put it back on yourself or on others and things like that. Like I kind of like to examine the weird gray areas of abuse dynamics and of how it makes you feel when you are like the victim of that, or when it's, especially when it's long term. Mm-hmm. And that keeps happening in my books. I just keep doing it because I'm very interested in it, because there's still so much people who have not been through it, or even people who have been through abuse, don't understand about how complicated it is, about what it does to you, about the fact that like, yeah, like you can love someone who's abusing you, or you can miss someone who abused you that you escaped even, and you know they're bad, but there's still a part of you that's like, yeah, but when things were good, like they made me feel really good, and you can miss that feeling. Then that doesn't make what they did okay, but the feeling is real. There are so many complicated feelings that come from it. And I think people don't always understand that if they haven't been through it, or if they just haven't had someone say, no, yeah, you're feeling those things. It's normal. Like, that's just kind of normal. It sucks. Sorry.
I think so many journeys in therapy begin with somebody thinking or saying like, yeah, I read this book and 6 months later, I'm like thinking about it every day. And so I imagine that, you know, for the better, this will be that for a lot of people.
I hope so. Like it's something that definitely the abuse that kind of shows up in the book is definitely very strongly based on like some of my own experiences. Not specifically because I'm not like a magic child, but the kind of abuse, like that kind of just like it's that kind of thing that when you have been through it, you know how to recognize it, is an immediate red flag when you see it and you're like, holy shit, that's bad. But when you're experiencing it and for the first time and you don't know how to recognize it, it feels kind of subtle. It feels natural. It feels like it's just someone telling you the truth about yourself rather than someone trying to make you weaker and more vulnerable and more dependent on them. Yeah, that was just something that was really important to me to explore, because it was a really big part of my teenage experience that I never really got to like talk about either a lot, because I was definitely in that area of like, when I tried to talk about it with like my friends, they were like, that seems very bad. You should leave this relationship. But I was like, no, you don't get it. Like, you don't understand. It's still good. And so I would isolate myself. And so I kind of missed out on really getting to like talk about it at that time. And I tend to write books for my high school self, similarly to how I like wrote it for fat high school Sarah, to be like, look, you can have an adventure. You're allowed to be the protagonist. I also wrote it to be like, hey, any of this seem familiar? And you see how it's bad here? Yeah, that was kind of my intent.
That makes complete sense. And I know that writing for your previous self, or trying to evoke a feeling that you had or wish you had, or create a space that you wish had existed for you, that's incredible. You know, in some ways, the more specific it is to your own experience, the more other people have a foothold in to be like, wow, this can also appeal to me in some weird way, even though I am not, you know, a magical / isolated girl, you know, learning in the forest how to be. What other elements of your teenagehood or hometown or a spooky jungle backyard did you manage to bring into this book?
It's, again, that thing where I am writing to like my teenage self, and I am in love with specifically the aesthetics and sounds and feels of like an Indiana summer. This is another one of those things where, like, similar to how I was kind of always told, not necessarily directly, but through the media that I read, that as a fat girl, I could not have magical adventures. There was also that definite feeling of like, well, nothing good comes from Indiana. Like, that's just how it feels. And both then and now, like the books I read that did take place in Indiana generally weren't like magical. Not that they don't exist, just that like most of them seemed to be about farming, or were like literary stuff I wasn't really interested in, especially as a kid, that I am like more interested in now. One of my very good friends wrote like a really incredible poem about dirt. That is like dirt in Indiana. That's just really beautiful. There's very good stuff to write about Indiana, but I always kind of felt like there was nothing good to come out of it. And I hated that. I was surrounded by people who just wanted to get out of Indiana. And I really loved Indiana. Like, I really do still. That's why I still live here and still plan to live here. It's also like an attitude that has just continued to today. Like, being a like leftist person in a red state is terrible in so many ways. One big one being that you don't know especially if you're a marginalized person, which of your neighbors may have been voting against your human rights.
Yep.
But also because the people in blue states, even the left people, don't treat you very well. They treat you like you are someone who can be sacrificed and like it is your own fault, in fact, if you are still in that state when whatever happens, like the way people always talk about cutting off Florida and stuff. It's like there's a lot of good people in Florida, actually, or in Texas who are just like...
It's almost like that attitude doesn't make things better.
Almost.
I would venture to say.
Yes, exactly.
Not very welcoming.
And it's like, I never want to deny that there are like bad parts of Indiana. Like, obviously there are. I am from the same hometown as Mike Pence. So I know, but at the same time, Mike Pence is from the same hometown as me, and I think I'm pretty cool. So it's like Columbus.
There you go.
Columbus didn't just produce him. It produced like me and my family and like a lot of really amazing, empathetic, cool people. But people act as if states like Indiana just have nothing to offer and there's nothing good here. And that always makes me really sad. So like one of the things I tried to do with this book and try to do with my other stories, I think nothing I've had that's been published has not had this element, is I try to evoke the feeling of specifically being like a kid or a teenager at like dusk in Indiana in the summer, in the cornfields, in the forests, with like cicadas and lightning bugs and just like all of those like little things. If they were closer to town, there would probably be fireworks every night, because Indiana is absolutely one of those states where the fireworks start in like May and just keep going. My hometown radio station has Christmas fireworks. Like they just kind of go forever.
Incredible.
That's incredible.
But like actually like there's a specific mention of cicadas multiple times in the book. And my copy editor was like, I think these are supposed to be katydids because cicadas don't come out at night. And I was like, okay, what? Because I, like, my whole life it had been cicadas.
They've always been cicadas, though.
Yes. So I did a bunch of Googling and I did a bunch of asking other people from Indiana. And I was like, listen, technically you might be right. They should probably be katydids, but colloquially, whatever they are, they're cicadas. So I'm going to call them cicadas.
That's such a vibe.
To me, that's like such an intrinsic part of like that. In many states, but for me in Indiana, like that Indiana summer is that sound and like the heat and humidity, and that's just like something I want to capture, is both like the magic of it, but also the spookiness of it. Also that feeling of like, there is maybe something in the forest, maybe, or in the corn or whatever. I had just staffed a teen writing workshop, and one of the really amazing kids, I read the first chapter of my current work in progress to them, and they loved it, which was very gratifying for me. But one of the kids who's completely brilliant, and I have no idea if they got this from somewhere else, but they said it, so I'm going to attribute it to them, where they talked about how like in New England, where they're from, the horror is like there's someone right in front of you and it's scary and you have to get away. And in the Midwest, it's there's no one here and it's scary and you have to get away. And that is kind of how it feels, is like that feeling of like, you don't know what's out past the bonfire. You don't know what might be lurking like in the hayride or anything like that. And that's kind of what I try to capture.
I think you succeeded. Having finished the book, definitely succeeded in that.
Good, because that's like what I really want to do. Like I really want to be able to like show Indiana has some cool stuff, some cool magic. It's a nice place to grow up despite all of the other very bad things that are also here. I just like those parts of my childhood are so like precious to me that I keep trying to recreate them, I guess.
There's a lot worse reasons to write a book.
That's kind of how I feel. I'm like, sometimes I feel like I should have, I don't know, like deeper, cooler, more philosophical reasons to write a book. But I'm like, mostly I just want to write a book that I think my teenage self would like and that makes me happy.
Yeah.
And a while ago, I decided that's fine. That seems like a good reason, actually. This is who I am as a person.
Yeah.
There is no limit on the number of books we can fit in the world.
Exactly.
That's true.
So it works out.
And you have the capability of writing a book, which is more of a reason to write a book.
Yes. Hopefully I will write more books.
Yes. We hope so, too.
I am making an attempt.
Well, we'll have you back on to talk about them. That's a promise.
I would love to be here. The one I'm working on right now has not been bought yet, but if it is, I will 100% love to talk about it because I am obsessed with it.
Yay!
It is so fun. It's like a corn maze horror thing that I have compared to... I like to like do that comp title thing, except I do it with like really weird, obscure things usually. So like this one, the inspiration is one of my favorite video games, The Return of the Obra Dinn.
Yeah.
And a classic sci-fi horror movie, Cube 2 Hypercube. But in a corn maze.
Incredible. truly incredible.
I love that so much.
And it's horror. So I'm like, I really hope someone buys it because I want to shove it at the whole world. I'm in love with it.
I want to read it, so I hope someone buys it. Incredible.
Oh, Sarah, we could talk to you forever, but sadly, the summer's night is drawing to a close. So can you please let our fabulous conspirators know where they can find you and follow your work online?
Absolutely. My website, sarahhollowell.com, has all of the information about my other work that you can read. If you want to actually find where I am live, it is almost always on Twitter, at Sarah Hollowell. I am there way too much, in fact, some might say. And you will get to know me perhaps too well.
But you do contribute cat photos to the discourse. So I always, if I'm feeling bad, I just look at your timeline and Blair Braverman's and I'm like, life is better.
You're set.
I love being in the same sentence as Blair Braverman. That makes me extremely happy.
You got it.
I do try to post a lot of cat photos because I'm obsessed with my cats and other people are too. So that's like what Twitter is for, probably. It's just cat photos. It's just like, here's the kitten we rescued. He's perfect.
Wonderful.
Rudy.
I am also on Instagram at SM Hollowell. The person who has the Sarah Hollowell handle messaged me once and they were just like, hey, I found, like, you're also Sarah Hollowell. And I was like, yes.
Can I have your username?
Give me your name.
I have the Sarah Hollowell handle like everywhere but here. And I was trying to think, like, can I bribe this person?
Can we make a deal?
They seem like a nice, normal, regular person, so I didn't, and I don't have money, so.
Fair enough.
Fair.
So on Instagram, SM Hollowell, I do not post there very often. I want to try to, but when I do, it's usually just, look at this kitten, or I look cute today, because that's usually when it happens. Twitter is a much more reliable place to find me. And that is also where I will always have, like, updates about stuff that I've written and books that are happening.
Fabulous.
And if you are listening to this episode when it comes out, your book's available. Go buy it.
Buy it. Especially buy it from anywhere. People always ask me, where's the best place to buy it from that benefits you? And buy it from anywhere. Seriously, it's fine. And you can get an audiobook. There's going to be an audiobook, which I'm extremely excited about. I do recommend buying it from an indie if you have a local independent bookstore you love. Always recommend that. But just buy my book so I can write more books.
We'll include a link to the bookshop.org link so that people can get it at their local indie bookstore.
Hell yeah.
Well, thank you again, Sarah, and everybody, remember,
Stay creepy.
stay cool. Spirits was created by Amanda McLaughlin, Julia Shafini, and Eric Schneider, with music by Kevin MacLeod and visual design by Allison Wakeman.
Keep up with all things creepy and cool by following us at Spirits Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr. We also have all of our episode transcripts, guest appearances, and merch on our website, as well as a form to send us in your urban legends and your advice from folklore questions at spiritspodcast.com.
Join our member community on Patreon, patreon.com/spiritspodcast, for all kinds of behind-the-scenes goodies. Just $1 gets you access to audio extras with so much more, like recipe cards, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic, for every single episode, director's commentaries, real physical gifts, and more.
We are a founding member of Multitude, an independent podcast collective and production studio. If you like Spirits, you will love the other shows that live on our website at multitude.productions.
Above all else, if you liked what you heard today, please text one friend about us. That's the very best way to help keep us growing.
Thanks for listening to Spirits. We'll see you next week.
Bye.